had to wait for the magistrate to get here. It's all taken care of now.
Let's just get this thing over with so I can go home, all right?
We better talk about it first. Okay, I'd like to talk to my client alone, please.
Okay, call me when you're ready.
Now, where exactly are we going for this hearing?
Right down the hall to police court.
Is there going to be anybody there because I look terrible?
No spectators, Raven. There'll be you, me, a court magistrate, a few court personnel, and whatever witnesses the magistrate decides to call.
And if he says that I can go home, then I can go home?
Sure, if he doesn't think there's enough reason for trial.
Okay, great. I feel better.
Glad you do.
Well, isn't it obvious? I don't know any of these people. I only met Lance a couple of weeks ago in the Caribbean, and the first time I ever saw that woman was last night in the restaurant.
Raven, very often, two different people have different versions of the same event.
I know. I've been thinking about that. I've also been thinking about something else.
What?
Gavin Wiley.
You have?
Yes. You know, he was sort of in the same predicament that I am.
You could say that.
Yeah. Everyone thought that he deliberately shot Gunther, and he kept saying that he was just struggling for the gun.
There's a parallel, isn't there, Raven?
Yeah. Maybe it did happen like that. But that doesn't mean that my husband framed him. I refuse to believe that.
Smiley, if I give this testimony, do you know what will happen?
Now, what are you worried about, Johnny, huh? What are you worried about? You don't trust me after all this time?
Yeah, man, we never talked about doing anything like this. Don't you think the people will be kind of surprised?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. Raven Whitney's gonna really be surprised. Well, I've never let you down, have I, Johnny?
No, not yet.
I put you together with Buffy Revere, set you up with Raven Whitney, and I worked out this whole Whitney scam, didn't I?
Yeah, but this, Smiley, I mean, what about Cliff Nelson?
What? What about Cliff Nelson?
Don't you think he's going to be kind of surprised?
Well, yeah, he'll be surprised, but he'll be out of the courtroom when you get up to testify.
Now, how are you going to do that? He's her lawyer.
Johnny, he'll be out of the courtroom.
And how about this, guys? Does this look like the real thing or no?
It's real, all right.
It's too real.
You know, I can't get over how you guys keep congratulating yourselves. I mean, this place was a police station before you found it.
Yeah, but it was abandoned. It was filthy and empty. It was the little things that brought it to life.
I can see that. Where'd you get all the wanted posters and
I'm
stuff?
afraid that was my contribution.
This too?
Yeah, you've heard of being booked. Well, that's the book they mean. The desk sergeant has to write down everyone who gets arrested.
Mrs. Raven Whitney. There it is.
Yeah, this place is great. You saw the little courtroom, right? And we have a real slammer.
And that's where you're keeping Raven?
You got it. I'd like to give you a little peek at it, but if we ran into Raven, it might mess things up a little bit, you know?
I don't want to see her.
I thought you would enjoy it.
Well, I wouldn't. I think it's awful you made that poor woman spend the entire night in a cell.
Oh, come on. If there's one thing Raven Whitney is not, it's poor.
Just the same, it was going too far.
Yeah, I tried to tell them that myself, Jody, but these guys, I think, have gotten a little carried away with their own sense of humor, if we can call it that.
Hey, lighten up, Calvin. You were part of it, too.
Yeah, I know. Don't remind me.
Well, you are going to tell her the truth now. Wasn't that the idea?
Oh, yeah, we'll tell her the truth.
When?
At the preliminary examination. At the end of it, we'll pull the big surprise. Can you imagine her face?
I can imagine her face right now. What you're doing is lousy.
Boy, what a bunch of bleeding hearts you guys turned out to be. I thought you were all with us.
Well, I wasn't. I never liked this idea.
I never believed that you'd actually go through with it.
And me. I can imagine that I actually let myself get talked into this thing in the first place, but there's no use complaining now. I made my own decision.
And you had good reasons, Calvin. Hell, we all had good reasons. And just think of what we're going to get out of it. When Raven realizes she was wrong about you, Gavin.
That's not going to soften her up. No way.
Smiley will soften her up. You just wait.
Miles, I'm glad you're here.
Well,
Miles, what are you doing here? Derek, I asked you not to call him.
I asked him the same thing. The whole hospital full of doctors here?
I'm sorry, Jinx. I thought Miles should be here. She wouldn't see any other doctor.
Look, I just got tired suddenly, that's all.
I think you just got jealous. You saw how comfortable Derek was in this bed. You wanted to try it out for yourself.
No, that's not true. I came here just to see if I could help him go home.
Here, let's get to the light. Now, when did it start, this tiredness?
Well, it's not really a tiredness, you know. It's kind of a vertigo, dizziness.
Well, it started yesterday. I had the same kind of feeling when I first came to see you. Same thing when I was rehearsing that play.
Maybe it's psychosomatic. You were rehearsing another play, weren't you?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, you know what I think? I think we ought to arrange for you to stay here just for a day or two so we can see what's going on.
Well, no, Miles, I can't do that. No, Derek and I are supposed to get married tomorrow.
That's right. She agreed to use the chapel at City Hall.
Yeah, I think it'll be just beautiful. Anyway, it doesn't matter where we get married, as long as we're man and wife very soon.
That's all that matters to
Yes,
us.
well, your health matters, too. You can postpone it for a day or two, can't you?
No, Miles, I don't want you to do that. Forget it.
Look, Jinx, I'm not saying there's anything serious wrong with you. I mean, you've had the same symptoms before. They cleared up entirely,
Yes,
right?
yes, I know exactly what you're thinking. You're thinking that once I get into this hospital bed, I'm not going to leave. Isn't that what you're thinking?
I'm not thinking anything of the kind, no.
Well, as a matter of fact, I'm feeling better already.
Now, come on, Jinx, don't push things.
No, I'm not, really. Just the threat of being put in bed has made me feel better. I think you're right. It was all psychosomatic.
Look, I'm still your doctor, Jinx. You once promised me that you would follow my advice.
Promise me. Do you remember that song? That they used to sing it at weddings. As a matter of fact, my father had it sung at all of his weddings. But, Derek, I don't want that sung at our wedding. I'm too tired of it.
Look, if you don't want that at our wedding, we won't have it.
You really think you can manage it?
Oh, well, you don't know how strong a woman can be when she has to be.
I've had some pretty good demonstrations of that, yeah.
Well, then that means that you and Nicole will come to the wedding?
Oh, we'll be there.
Oh, great. Well, listen, the only thing is you can't bring that stethoscope or that blood pressure thing.
All right, I promise I won't bring my little black bag at all, but in exchange, you gotta let me use it right now. Sure.
Very much.
I'll bring you sushi later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, this place is lovely, hon.
It is, isn't it? But watch out for the sake.
Ah.
Now, tell me about your interview with Eddie Lorimer.
You know what surprised me most about him?
What?
He was exactly what I had expected. I was hoping that he'd be, well, something other than the usual gangster type.
Oh, you thought just because he calls himself a business executive now that he'd look different than he did before?
Oh, I never saw him the first time he was in Monticello.
And that time, all he was a small-time crook selling illegal guns for a living.
Yes, and here he is now, heading up the Lucky Salvage Company. It's not a small business.
Oh, I know. The DA's office has kept close watch on that enterprise. Their gross sales are 5 or 6 million a year.
But legitimately, as far as you know.
As far as we know. If there's any input of bad money, we haven't been able to trace the source. However, I wouldn't be surprised if it's there.
Well, there's one thing I'm sure of. Mr. Lorimer is really enjoying his new eminence.
Oh? What's his office like?
Early gaudy. I think you can use the same word to describe his secretary, too.
Poppy Johnson?
Uh-huh. She certainly was popping.
Well, I'm sure she never graduated from stenographic school.
Oh, darling, I don't think that shorthand is a prerequisite for that job. I'm going to have to disappoint you, though, because I told you I was going to interview the man to try to find out his secret as to how he rose to power. I couldn't find a clue.
I never expected you would, Nancy.
He wants desperately to have an image of respectability. And he wants you to believe that his business is, quote, strictly legitimate.
So his real purpose in granting the interview was for you to bring a message to me.
Exactly.
If he could convince you of his legitimacy, maybe you would convince me. Well, I'm afraid Eddie is going to be disappointed. We'll be keeping a close eye on him for a long time.
I should think so. I mean, if he's taken over Lucky Mitchell's empire.
Mitchell was lucky, all right, but he was also careful in the way he ran the organization. At least he kept the violence to a minimum. Something tells me that Eddie Lorimer isn't going to be that smart.
Well, I got the interview anyway. I don't know if he's going to enjoy reading it, but I know my editor did.
Oddly enough, I was being interviewed by the press at the same time.
You were?
Mm-hmm. Do you know a reporter for the Monticello Star named Phil Barnes?
No, I don't think so. Although they have reporters coming and going all the time.
Well, this guy came on like gangbusters. I must have been in a pretty mellow mood to grant an interview on such short notice.
Why, what did he want to know? The usual?
Pretty much. If he is new at the Star, I don't hold much hope for his future. His questions weren't very pointed. In fact, by the time the whole thing was over, I kept wondering why he even bothered. Actually, the concept of a crime wave is slightly erroneous, Mr. Barnes. We do keep a chart of crimes reported, of criminal indictments and so forth, and we can see the peaks and the valleys, but it's very rare when the level changes drastically.
See anything?
Oh, now watch it. Oh, just keep moving your keys and she'll never know the difference, okay? Hey, you guys ready? Oh, get ready. Here they come.
Raven, it's right in here.
Well, at least the place is empty.
Well, I told you it wouldn't be. There are no spectators at these preliminary hearings. You sit there.
All rise. Police Court, District of Monticello is now in session. Judge Herman Baxter presiding. Be seated.
Now then, would the party of the first part make himself recognized here in the courtroom at this time?
Your Honor, I'm the attorney. This is my client, Raven Whitney.
Yes, I see. The charge here is homicide.
It was an accident. I did not kill anyone.
Yes, you will have a chance to tell your story, Mrs. Whitney. I see you've already made a full confession.
I certainly did not.
What the judge means is that you've admitted to the arresting officer that you shot the woman.
She tried to shoot someone. I just tried to...
Enough, Mrs. Whitney. You will not speak until you are asked a question directly. Counsel, I'm surprised at you for not advising your client of the rules and procedure in this court.
Your Honor, my client is obviously distressed over the tragic events.
It is tragic, too, huh? See, the victim was young, very young. Now then, I've been told that the arresting officer, Detective Calvin Stoner, because of certain police duties, will not be present at this court at this time. Therefore, we shall begin by calling on the defendant, Mrs. Raven Whitney. Mrs. Whitney, would you take the stand, please? I will be in charge of this investigation. Mrs. Whitney, would you place your left hand on the Bible? Raise your right hand, bailiff.
Repeat after me. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You forgot the word solemnly, Mrs. Whitney, but we shall overlook that now. Would you be good enough to tell the court in your own words what happened exactly on the night in question?
All right, it was an accident. I hardly knew the man I was with, and
Mrs. Whitney, facts. We are interested in facts.
I went out to dinner last night with a man that I had met a few weeks ago in the Caribbean.
Yes, that man, his name was Lance Halliday.
Yes. And then at dinner, we met a woman who was with a couple that I knew, Mr. and Mrs. Mike Carr. Mike Carr happens to be the district attorney.
Yes, we are aware of that, Mrs. Whitney.
Well, he will tell you that that is the first time I have ever met the woman.
But not the last time.
No. I met her later that evening when I went to Mr. Halliday's penthouse.
Yes, what exactly were you doing there?
We were just talking.
Just talking.
Do I have to answer that?
Your Honor, this is a preliminary hearing. I don't think that's relevant.
Sustained.
All right. Well, then this woman came bursting in the apartment, and she started accusing me of all sorts of things, and then she pulled out a gun, and there was this big struggle, and the gun flew in front of me, and I picked it up, and it went off. But I did not kill her.
Yeah,
I don't even know who pulled the trigger.
Hey, Mrs. Whitney, Mr. Nelson, would you calm your client?
Yes, Your Honor. Raven, please, calm down.
I would suggest a 5-minute recess at this time. I think it would not be inappropriate.
All rise.
Take a break, honey. Raven, calm down. You gotta take it easy, all right? Everything will be fine. I believed you. I really did.
Does he believe me? This place is driving me nuts.
Now, believe me, this whole thing will be over in just a few minutes. Trust me, okay?
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
There's a phone call for you. It sounded very urgent.
Who would know me here?
I don't know, but I suggest that you take it. You can pick it up at my desk.
I have a phone call. I'll be right back.
Oh, baby.
I'm gonna go get a glass of water. Hello, Cliff Nelson here. Hello? Hello, Cliff Nelson here.
Cliff, it's Mike Carr.
Mike? How did you know I was here? How'd you get this number?
I had to play detective, actually. I came to see you at your office, but you weren't there, and nobody knew where you were. Anyway, I found this number scrawled on the pad. I thought I'd try it.
You came to my office? Oh, it must be important. What's so urgent?
I can't really talk over the phone, Cliff, but take my word for it. It's an emergency.
Emergency?
Can you meet me at your office right away? I'll wait for you here.
Well, no, I can't, Mike. Well, I'm very busy now.
Cliff, I wouldn't do this if it weren't serious. You might even say it's a matter of life and death.
Oh, yeah, sure. Hey, Hector, look.
Yeah.
It's the district attorney. He's got to see me. Can you guys handle this thing without me?
Oh, well, sure, yeah. I don't see why not. It's almost over anyway.
Great, thanks. Hello, Mike. I'll be right there. I'll meet you at my office, okay?
Thanks, Cliff. Thanks a million.
Be seated.
Now then, shall we proceed?
Wait a minute.
Wait.
My lawyer has not come back yet.
Well, that's all right, Mrs. Whitney. We can call on the next witness. You are free to step down.
Mr. Lance Halliday, please take the stand. Repeat after me, please. I solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, Mr. Halliday, would you tell the court in your own words, please, exactly what happened on the night in question at your place of residence?
Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Whitney and I had dinner just as she said. And while we were there, a young lady, Jinx Avery, came up to our table and was introduced to Mrs. Whitney. Well, I should have realized right there that the trouble...
Facts, Mr. Halliday. The court must have facts. Facts.
Jinx had been my girl for a long time. And do you know how jealous some women can get?
Are you telling the court that Miss Avery was a jealous woman?
No, Your Honor. I'm speaking about Mrs. Whitney.
Mrs. Whitney.
What are you saying?
Mrs. Whitney.
From what I knew of Raven, Mrs. Whitney, I almost expected a hair-pulling contest right there in the restaurant.
Wait a minute!
Whitney, please.
Well, nothing happened. I don't know, I guess because Mr. and Mrs. Carr were there. But I decided that I better invite Raven back up to my apartment to calm her down. Well, just then the house phone rang, and I learned that Jinx was on her way upstairs.
That is not what happened. He's lying.
Another outburst like that, Mrs. Whitney, will have to remove you from the court.
I can't believe that he's making the whole thing up.
For the years I have been judge, I have never encountered anything such as this, Mr. Halliday. Mr. Halliday, would you please tell the court what happened after Miss Avery called you on the house phone?
Well, I couldn't stop Jinx from coming upstairs. But worse yet, I couldn't convince Raven to leave. Well, suddenly Raven remembered the gun I keep in my apartment for protection.
Mrs. Whitney knew of the gun.
Yes, Your Honor, I told her about it. It was probably the dumbest thing I'd ever done.
Then the gun involved was yours, not Miss Avery's, as the defendant stated.
Yes, you can check it out if you like. It's registered in my name.
Why are you doing this to me?
Well, Raven had the gun out before Jinx even got upstairs. She didn't give the poor girl a chance. Raven Whitney shot Jinx Avery in cold blood.